purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life.
Welcome back to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ewell. Today, I got a very special guest, Dr. Paul Reid, who's been a chiropractor and just in the industry 28 years. Also runs a coaching consulting company called Unstoppable Cairo. Paul, I want to welcome you on the show today.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Appreciate the connection we've had the last 4 years, maybe 3.5, 4 years, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're back in the PNW and
yes, right now.
My old stomping grounds.
It's a beautiful 60-degree sunny day right now, which is nuts for January. So I'll take it. This whole week's going to be nice.
Nice. It's supposed to be 75 here today.
All right. Don't rub it in.
I would take 60 in January all day there.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Cool, man. Well, for our audience who doesn't know you, can you just kind of talk about a little bit just what got you started as a chiropractor, and then we'll kind of transition into what you're doing now.
Yeah, unlike a lot of today's chiropractors, I had an experience with chiropractic when I was in 8th grade, and that really ignited my passion, enthusiasm, and excitement to become a chiropractor. And so, after my college career, pursued chiropractic straight away. Got licensed in 98, scaled and grew 5 clinics, exited and sold those. Had 30 some employees, and then now I'm just fully run ChiroFest as well, which is one of the we're 16 years deep into that, one of the profession's largest events, for sure the largest in the Northwest. And then had coached previously in my career, but it wasn't right timing with a buddy of mine. We both had young kids, just wasn't, and full practicing, we just wasn't right. So then I started mentoring, coaching, inspiring docs here again about 3 years ago. And so full-time mentorship, helping docs, create their next best, whether it's scaling by themselves, scaling with multiple docs, scaling with multiple clinics, whatever they need, as well as most importantly, working on themselves.
Nice. And dude, the one thing I'm always curious about is, when I see your pictures from college, I know you played at Dew, which I got to play on that field when I was in high school, because we used to play Pullman High School. And
I was probably there because you're a couple years younger than me, just a couple. So I was probably
funny story, man, is I actually remember playing there. And I think it was about 30 degrees. And I remember getting tackled for the first time
on the concrete.
And I had no like elbow, anything. And I just remember like the skin getting shaved off my arm, and was like, dude, this is the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. And that was a really funny memory. But I was like, man, this like hurts worse getting tackled on this than anything.
It was our turf was terrible at the time. I'll leave it at that.
It was like the ultimate rug burn / like asphalt burn.
Horrible. It was horrible.
Yeah. What did you weigh in college, man?
I showed up about what I weigh now, about 230, and then when I left after my transition through a few positions post injury and skill set, I left at about 280. So about 50 pounds heavier than I am now.
So, I mean, I know a lot of guys that play O-line, in college or even the NFL. I mean, they typically don't look like you, So what have you done, in the last, 20 years to keep the weight off?
Yeah, I've always been a gym rat. I started training, dude. I rode my bike to a gym. I was 14 and my parents bought me a membership at the gym that was probably 5 miles away from our house. And I used to ride my bike there, when I was to start working out. So I've been a gym rat. Like, I've been a gym enthusiast. In high school, I actually, once I got my license, started working at a gym in the off season and the weekends. And so fitness has always been a part of my life. And so that weight, for one, is unhealthy. And two, it wasn't my genetic makeup. It was a forced, eating late at night and eating way beyond what my caloric intake should be. And so I just did when I started chiropractic school, I did a hard reset. I had always wanted to do a bodybuilding show growing up in a gym. I'm like, you know what? This is a great time to do a bodybuilding show. So the Northwest Natural was like 18 months into me starting chiropractic school. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to pick that show. And so I did a show. I went from 280 down to 212 and 4.5% body fat in, 16, 18 months or something like that.
Nice. So was that the end of your bodybuilding career? Did you
It
keep?
was. It was my first and my last. I've thought about maybe doing a physique show now, but yeah, that was the beginning and the end of my bodybuilding career.
That's funny. I did my first show at 17 years old,
Oh wow,
and
nice.
I remember. I don't know if you remember Nasser El
Oh
Somebody.
yeah, yeah,
He was a guest poser, and he was about 300 pounds at about
yeah,
5-6% body
yeah.
fat.
Giant.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy looks like an alien.
Yeah, right. They do.
So, yeah, that was kind of my first intro to that. But yeah, it was different for sure. Different. Hold on one second. So yeah, man, let's talk a little bit about like, I mean, obviously you've been in the industry almost 3 decades. Like, talk to me about early on in your career, like when you first started your clinic, like what were, maybe like the top 3 things that you had to do? Because like everything's different now, right? We don't
Way, way different. Night and
yeah,
day. Stark difference.
but
Yeah.
like what were things you had to do then to become successful at being a chiropractor?
Man, then honestly, I mean, there's different degrees of success, but first and foremost, I knew, and I think this is where a lot of docs struggle today that I'm working with and or that I speak with that choose not to work with me. Like they really don't have clarity on what they want to build. And I hired, again, full transparency, like everything I teach and do is something that I either learned from a mentor or I learned the hard way, right? And which is the easiest way? Learning from a mentor, right? They've already paid the dummy tax. And so I hired my first coach 6 months before I opened my practice. Like, hey, I know nothing about business. I'm going to take a risk and hire you. Literally wrote predated or post-dated 12 checks for $650 and mailed them to him. My wife, we were married. She's like, what are you doing? We haven't even opened our business. But it was the best thing I ever did. And so that said, is I think that most docs today, and even back then, really don't have clarity on what they want to build. And so he really forced me to sit down and like, what does it look like? What does it smell like? What's the experience going to be for your patients? And so that, I think that was the, jump started my success because I didn't open my doors and then go, now what? It was like, okay, here's what I want to build. Here's what the space looks like. Here's the amount of people I want to serve. Here's how I'm going to serve them. Here's the outcomes I expect to get. And then I was able to, to craft, reverse engineer what it would take to build that from that point. But today, too many docs like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then they jump in with no clarity, no certainty. And then it's like, well, so you can't reverse engineer something you don't know you don't want to build.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's important, is like, hey, most people are doing things because they're passionate about it,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know how to define, kind of like begin with the end in mind, right?
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
once you have a destination you want to go to, reverse engineering, that process is a lot easier. And, that's kind of a big thing, when it comes to your business, because like passion isn't enough. You got to have, you got to have the outcomes that you help patients get. All right. So obviously hiring a coach is
Yeah.
huge, kind of like defining the results and outcomes you want your patients to get. Like at what point, going into your chiropractic is like, what point did you know that it would work for you?
Again, it's always ambiguous and you don't really know. But once I got going and I hit my target goals within my 90 days, I knew that I had a formula that was functioning at a high level.
Yeah.
I didn't, obviously there were some little roadblocks, but I really, I accelerated extremely fast. Two, I think one, I knew what I was doing and God got on my side, like opened up some doors and allowed things to really flourish in a short amount of time. Again, based on, I think I was following and doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But once, so I would say probably within 90 days, I saw that the formula that I was teaching and teaching my practice members and was working. It was getting the results and patients were referring, they were staying, they were paying all the things that we, as a business owner, you want.
Yeah. No, that's so important. So talk to me about like kind of like the 3 biggest things you see today with,
Yeah.
chiropractors, just, with how they practice, how they show
Yeah.
up, kind of all those things.
Yeah, again, our industry and it may be in other industries too, but I think we have a tendency to chase shiny objects, right? And you can't be a master to too many things, otherwise none of them are going to work. And so back to
Yeah.
really knowing that one thing. And it's great to have ancillary options for your practice members to serve them, right?
Right.
Because, in my opinion, I was hardcore, like spine and nervous system needs to come first, then everything else that serves the spine and nervous system, can fall in suit behind that. As long as you're second fold to that, as long as you're congruent with it, right? If you're offering a service that you're incongruent with and you're doing it to chase dollars, that there's incongruence and you're serving the wrong master and you're going to get bad results long term.
Right.
But really understanding and knowing who you are and how you want to serve those practice members, and then doing your best to do that. So again, there is lots of options today. We've evolved as an industry. Healthcare has evolved, not only just chiropractic, but healthcare and the things that we can provide for people to help them not only get well, but stay well. And I think you just need to, it's okay to offer those ancillary things, but keeping the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is a lot of chiros shift from their primary, like I went to school to be a chiropractor, and it's great that I can offer nutrition advice and weight loss advice and all these different modalities or things. But if you lose sight of the main thing from being the main thing, then everything's diluted. And while you might have some short-term success, what's going to happen when the trend shifts, right? Like when the trend shifts, then you're going to have to shift. But if you keep your core thing is your primary source of revenue, your primary source of messaging, and then you add these other ancillary things that are serving that primary message, then it's okay. But I think today I've seen too many chiropractors start chasing niches, which are really, if they're out of alignment with who they are, then there's just incongruence, and it's not gonna. I would equate it to like you were a gym guy, right? Before you in your previous life, you had 3 gyms. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, an easy correlation, like the primary, I'm guessing and speculating, but was the primary revenue generator memberships?
Well, I had training gyms, so primary
Okay, a little different.
training. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think what you're saying is like, look, the foundational part of your practice should be training. If you're a training gym, the foundational part of a chiropractic clinic is chiropractic. And if that's not the foundation, then ultimately, trends shift, niches shift. You're probably not going to have that foundation to land back on. And so, like, I mean, I would say I agree with that, because ultimately, if you're a trainer, in order for me to add like niche services to that, I got to have foundation principles in training, because if they're not doing those things, the other things aren't going to make that big of a significant difference. And so, chiropractic is the same way, man. I really think that all health is the same way. It's like the foundation has to be the foundation, and that goes deep and that goes wide. And then what you build on that, I mean, ultimately is your choice.
Absolutely.
How you want to do things, but you got to have that foundation. And I think that's important in any business, right?
Yeah, and I would 100%. I would tell you that the chiropractors that, I mean, and there are a lot doing well with doing niche services, but they would even do that much, in my opinion, if their core to your foundation, to your point, was strong, they would even do that much better.
Right.
But if your core is weak and you're adding this over here and adding that over there, and they're all doing okay, yeah, you're winning, but not to the level or degree that you could win if your core was really solidified and had a firm foundation like we should be built on.
Right.
It'd be the same thing like if LA Fitness, right? They got tanning salons and they do tanning beds and supplements, but if they can't rely on the tanning beds and the supplements, it's their core foundation of like, we're a gym, like, but we add these other things to your life.
Right. It's more of a, it's more in alignment with, what they're already offering, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but most of those box gyms, they're not going to say, hey, we're making all our money doing supplements, or we're making all our money, doing tanning beds. So
That's what, I and again, we should offer those things. And again, healthcare has completely evolved and shifted from when I started in 1990. I graduated in December 97, right? So it's been 29 years, and so stuff is way more accessible. People themselves are more knowledgeable because we have information at our fingertips that we didn't have 30 years ago almost. And so I think we need to evolve, but again, without that foundation, that evolution's it's going to be weak, and over time it'll die.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing for me is like, because I come from a different industry,
Hmm.
but it's really the same. It's like health, people want outcomes, they want results, right? And I think what's maybe shifted in chiropractic more so in the last 5 years is people are looking for more answers. Like maybe 10 years ago, they didn't know what they were looking for other than just, I got to get out of pain. Now you have, people are talking more about nervous system. People are talking more about, whole health, and people are talking about, all these different things. And I think that people are open to, other avenues of health than going to a traditional doctor. And I really think that that's why people are looking at chiropractors for the answers, is because they just don't trust the traditional medical system anymore as much as they probably did 5 years ago. And then going back 10 years,
Yeah.
to where now you guys have been preaching like, dude,
Yeah.
vaccines are like this.
Yeah.
Now people are actually like believing
And
it versus
yeah.
thinking, dude, my chiropractor is
He's a quack.
crazy.
Yeah.
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 And so that's what I really think has evolved as much as anything in your industry. But I think it's cool because you guys have an opportunity to be like, well, dude, we've been preaching this message for a long
Yep.
time,
Yeah.
and people are more open to hear that message.
100%. I think, and it simply because I think that's where the internet has honestly benefited us, because it's easy to expose things that are false and not working anymore. And that same knowledge of like, how do I fix myself? Well, this doesn't work, and now we're seeing that it really never really did. And so
Right.
it's helped the consumer understand that like the things that we have been preaching and teaching and saying for decades are actually true and foundational, and it's important to listen. So yeah, I think 100% you're right. It's a great opportunity, a great time to be a chiropractor, because people are are open, are listening, are reaching out and wanting to adopt other approaches to getting and staying well. So it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure, man. So a lot of the, let's talk about, because obviously you have a huge, presence in the chiropractic space. You have your, CEC events, you're doing ChiroFest. Like when you do events like that, what are the things that you want chiropractors to know when they come to an event like that?
My event is back to that. We bring in speakers from all over the world, all great individual, at their vertical, wherever they're, whatever space they're in. But it's really, my event is anchored around helping them reestablish that foundation of who they are and why they do what they do. Again, yes, do we have people that sell lasers at our event? Vendors, yes. Red light, yes. Shockwave, yes. Like all of those ancillary things. But the takeaway from the event is really grounding yourself, because you are a chiropractor, and
Right.
regrounding you in those principles of being a chiropractor to solidify that foundation, so that you can go back and serve at a higher level, but incorporate some of those other things that are going to benefit people in healing as well. So it's, yeah, so we're super diverse at our speaker. We usually have 20 some speakers, super diverse, but it's, again, I would say my aspiration and premise behind doing it is helping chiropractors, keep their core principles as close to their heart as possible.
When you guys talk, because like here's kind of what I see is like it's almost like chiropractic on one side is like a religion.
Yep.
If you don't do it, this way, and then there's chiropractic on the other side, which is different, but it's funny because it reminds me of like training. I remember going to a seminar one time, and a guy, basically his name is Dan John. I don't know if you ever read his books, but he used the analogy that working out is like Mexican food. And we're all kind of sitting there like, well, what do you mean? Like, well, it has rice, it has beans, it has some type of meat, and it has a tortilla. And he's like, I don't care what you call it, as long as it
It's a
has
tortilla.
Mexican food. And so, which is really like, those are the foundational things that you do. And if you get away from those, all of a sudden it's not, Mexican food anymore, right? It's maybe Italian. And I think, that's what's important. And I think that's any industry, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
hey, getting away from the foundational principles, then, it may not be that thing anymore. But yeah, I mean, the industry, like I think every industry in the health space has changed tremendously in the last 5, 6 years. And,
And
there's,
we'll continue to change. I just met this morning with a buddy that's involved in a piece of technology that here in the Northwest that somebody's developing that you literally stand on and it scans you, does a 360 scan. You're holding these things as well. And it gives you, do you need this orthotic, gives your height, your body fat, like checks your blood. Like it's crazy the technology that is.
What is it? 3D or?
It hasn't even, it's only that there's a few high level teams that are using it. It's not available for the general public yet. But it's
Okay.
pretty nuts. He was showing me it's super cutting edge. So to your point, like, yes, it's constant. And that would be great. If we could figure out a way, because it's checking your posture and joint mobility and where you're going to break down and have injuries, like for the chiropractic space, like it's preventing you. It's like, it's helping you, diagnose, at a super high level of what's not performing and functioning right. That's going to cause injury down the road. So, I mean, it's super cool.
Right. They have a device like that for body fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would scan
Nexa
like your
or whatever
body.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not DEXA, it's like 3D something. It scans like your whole body and then tells you where your adipose, visceral fat
Yeah.
is. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nuts.
What are and you obviously have a coaching program, but like what are kind of the foundational principles of that for somebody who comes into your program?
First and foremost, we get clarity on what they want to create and where they're at. And I see docs a year in, 30 years in that have kind of gotten off core. And then, when they're off core, thing isn't fun and you don't get the results that you're hoping to get. And so really helping them first and foremost anchor back to who they are and why they're doing what they're doing and helping them get clarity on where they want to go and then reverse engineering who they got to become in order to create that in their life. And I would tell you that I'm not, my every one of my docs, I tell them, listen, like chiropractic is chiropractic, and I'm not going to tell you or share with you anything you don't already know. I'm just going to help you get clarity on where you want to go and then help you hold your line to that process of executing on the things that you need to execute on. Because a day one is day one, a day two is a day two. Yes, I might help you refine it a little bit, but it's going to be within a certain percentage of what you're already doing. So just first and foremost, helping them anchor to who they are and keeping them accountable to become who they need to become.
What's the hardest part of getting people, once they've defined, kind of like what they want, to actually applying it? Like, what do you?
Yeah. Taking action, as you know, right? And same with your space, like getting them to actually do the work that they know they need to do, and then not just do it, short term, stopping, keep on keeping on, in the process and know that it's going to work. And then obviously, you want to analyze your work and make sure that it's moving you in that direction. And when it's not, pivot and course correct. But yeah, to get them to keep on keeping on for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think, that's just coaching, right? It's like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Here's what you want. Here's what you said you want,
Yeah.
Here's what we defined as far as the work you got to do. Like, why aren't you doing it? Right.
Yeah.
And I think that goes all the way back to football,
Yep.
and it's like, you guys say you want to win the championship, but, a lot of you guys are sleeping in and like,
Yeah, you're
not
not showing up early and staying late and doing the work.
Yeah. So I think that happens all throughout all of this. Who are like some of the mentors, man, that you've had that have really like impacted you and like helped you grow in your industry?
Yeah, I think my very first, probably the one that helped me the most was my very first coach that I already brought up, and it was Ron Oberstein at the time, the most recently retired Life West president. So I started working with Ron literally 6 months before I opened, and he really helped me establish that core that I'm talking about is who I wanted to be as a chiropractor. And does that evolve and change? As you evolve and change, and as the industry evolves and change, 100%, but that core foundation was always the core foundation. And so Ron, of all the mentors I worked with, and I continue to work, I'm an advocate of you should always have a coach or two or three, depending on, how much you want to move the needle in life. And so I've always still do and always have had coaches. But Ron was probably, I'd say, if I had to go back and look at my chiropractic career, he probably had the biggest influence in me by far.
And that was your first coach?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty good, man. If you got that good of a coach right off the bat.
Yeah, he's just a great human, and helped me just so many things. Even beyond chiropractic, just the relationship he had with his family, and yeah, just a lot of foundational principles for life. So it was great.
Well, let me ask you this, man. Like knowing you've built, multiple practices, knowing you've sold them, like what would you do different now in the way that you build your practice versus maybe when you very first started?
Honestly, I probably wouldn't have sold. So hindsight's 20. And it was great. It was a God thing and aligned and it worked and all those things. But I had a really, really, really well running, highly, high retention with our practice team members. Like we had longevity with our team. And I think that's, based on the culture that Heidi and I had built. But we had a really great thing going and making a really big impact and allowing our employees to live great lives. And so if I go back, maybe I wouldn't have done that. Hindsight's always the best. But in regards to the practice, it worked really well. I mean, I could have learned to be a better communicator. And I think as DCs or any business owners, an entrepreneur, like, something an afterthought is like, I didn't communicate my expectations of my employees early on. I just thought that they knew what I wanted of them. And that's, I like to say unspoken expectations is premeditated disappointments. Like I was like,
Right.
maybe looking to get upset at them. And so I looking back, like, always moving forward, I want to make sure that I'm super transparent and authentic and clear on what I expect of an employee, which I don't think a lot of employers do very well. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think for business owners, you're a hard charger, right?
yeah.
And sometimes, when it comes to leading a team, you can get too far ahead of your people and then you're like, well, why the heck aren't they following me? And you're like, well, I forgot to actually like tell them where we're going, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I always tell people like, look, if you don't have a system to manage your people, you're going to manage them based off feelings and you're going to burn out your team,
Yeah.
doing that
And
as a process.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of chiros. I'm 5 years in and I'm burnt out. I'm like, bro, that's because you don't have a system, and so you're memory managing everything instead of communicating to your team, telling them expectations of deadlines and responsibilities, so that you can show up and know. And then you have once a week. Okay, Mary was supposed to get me that by noon at Friday. I don't have it. Hey, what's going on? Why don't I have that? But yeah, so that's you're 100% right. Without a system, and that's the only thing that allowed us to scale was systems and process. So everybody knew what each team member was supposed to do, and that evolved as we grew. One office was different than two, and two was different than five, and all the
Right.
intricacies that needed to happen in between. But that's part of growth.
Yeah. What would you, speak into that a little bit as far as like I see a lot of chiropractors, not even have employee meetings every week or not having team meetings and team trainings. And then they have this expectation that people are just gonna, do the work. And it's like,
Yeah,
dude, did you have a
yeah,
meeting and set some expectations? And then you're upset at the end of the week because they didn't do it, but
yeah.
you didn't really like paint it out for them.
Yeah, you have to. If it doesn't matter if you have one office and one CA, yourself and three CAs, yourself. You want to bring on an associate. I would say maybe in my space, that's one like my I don't want to say zone of genius, but something that I've been able to help a lot of docs do is you have to have those systems and processes. You have to train your team regularly. It'd be like the guarantee of the Seahawks practice this week. They didn't know who they were going to play until yesterday. But
Right.
I guarantee you they practiced all week and set expectations of how they're going to perform and what they're going to be running. And so it's you have to, like, every team has a system and process, and you have to train on a regular. Look at any reproducible model, right? Back to the E-Myth. McDonald's has a reproducible model and they train on that model. Chipotle, like all of them, Chick-fil-A, like they all have a system and process that they follow, and everybody knows their roles and responsibilities and the expectation. Docs that think they can just show up at, start serving patients at 9, I'm going to be there at 8:59 and things are going to go well. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing actually about the Seahawks now that's different than even when Pete Carroll was there is listening to their coach talk about being committed to the process, and like he says the same thing, and you even catch the players saying the same thing, and I think that when that becomes your culture, you're now creating a winning culture, right? And like look at them, like in 2 years, right? They're 14-3. But it's like success leaves clues, and like hearing him speak that out and then hearing the players, and then you're like, well, how did they get to 14-3? And you're like, well, they've all bought into that culture. And I think that's really cool. That's kind of why I like listening to, coaches from like the NFL or coaches from teams that are successful, is to understand what is their process and like how do they do things.
Look at University of Indiana. I mean, they have
Yeah.
like 0 5-star recruits on their team.
Yeah.
They're essentially the this morning we were talking about, they're almost like the money ball of the Oakland A's in the 80s. So like they put
Right.
together a bunch of guys that have a will to win. They strategically are working within their zone of genius to excel, and they're I mean they put a beat down on Oregon like nobody's put a beat down on Oregon in a long time.
Right. Besides the Huskies,
Yeah, there you go. You had to get that in. You couldn't talk about the Cougs without bringing the Huskies in. Just,
you gotta always put it in there. Well, I mean, the outline of my thing is purple,
yeah, there you go.
you know.
Oh, good stuff.
You
Yeah,
guys
man. I
may
think
not
Doc Tony's
understand this, but Paul went to WSU. I was a big UW fan, so there's always a little bit of.
the
We
banter.
got a mutual friend that's a Coug too.
Yeah, we
And
got
it's
some.
the
We always have
chiropractor.
some banter going on a little bit in the background.
Yeah, man. Talk to me. Like, what are 2 to 3 trends you're really seeing in the chiropractic space, and like how you see it kind of like shifting, over these next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I think the ongoing, AI is obviously super, super evolving. I'm still a high touch person, and so I think is as much as these docs, you know, chiros. I'm sorry, I'll say it, but most of y'all are lazy, and so you're looking for the path of least resistance. And if you can find an AI application or program that's going to allow you from having to train your team, or having, preventing you from having to do these steps with practice members, most of them are jumping on it, which is okay. But again, we're in a service industry. Like there's still a human to human that needs to be
Sure.
engaged, and so I think there's a huge push, and AI is starting to get pretty deep and rooted in all of our EHR systems and phone systems and things. And while it has its place, I just strongly encourage, as I'm seeing that trend, like docs to stay involved. Like we are in the human service business. So that's one. And then I think our reach is continuing to expand as the internet is expanding. And I think it's important. As much as I'm 54, as much as you can't teach old dogs new tricks, I got to learn and stay current to reach people. And so it's no different with your practice. You have to be online. You have to have an online presence. People are looking for that information, and it helps them. Whereas when I first started, they literally had to come. I either met them at an event or they had to come to the office to meet me. Whereas now you can, with posting regularly, people connect, right? We all connect
Yeah.
with different people differently. And you and I feel like we have a connection when we first met. And so it's like, it's that same thing in the chiropractic space. Somebody that really resonates with me might not resonate with this doc, and your online presence is giving them an opportunity to resonate with you before they show up in your practice, which I think is an advantage. So those are really two of the things that I see. And then outreach. I guess the third thing I would say is new patient acquisition is evolving way more today than it's completely different. Like if there's two stark differences, I would say that's probably the biggest stark difference from 1998. Like I ran this back in the day. We had these things called killer ads, where I put a newspaper insert, and it was a full page, or not a full page, but an 8.5 by 11 insert. That thing would produce 70 to 100 something new patients every time I ran it. It's different today. I teach my
Right.
docs, like, you have to be all outreach verticals, whether it's social media, your Google, your website, your internal referrals, all of those platforms. You need to be doing at all times, and reaching people in all verticals.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think back even my first job at a gym. I remember the manager, he's like, "Hey, you seem kind of quiet and you don't really seem approachable." He's like, "I want you to go out and meet 5 people on the gym floor and come back, bring me their name and bring me their goal." And I'm sitting there thinking like, dude, I want to punch this guy right now, but I really need this job. So I went out, I come back, and I slapped down like 10 names, 10 goals, and I was like, "All right, here you go." And he's like, "You got the job." And but I remember that because it was like I had to go out and actually talk to people and learn how to communicate. And what I see today, whether you're a chiropractor, trainer, whatever, is people have stopped communicating. And it's like, we had to go hand out business cards. Like, you meet a guy at a grocery store, he's like, hey, what do you do? I was like, actually, I'm a trainer. I'd love to get you in for a free workout. You had to like pitch right there on the spot. And I really think that's what is missing. And we have to communicate about what we do so much to where it becomes like, almost like a language. Like you said, is like people aren't clear on who they help. So it's like, if I run into you in the store, you're like, hey man, like what do you do? And you're like, hey, I'm a chiropractor, versus saying like, actually I help people, get out of pain, restore their health, and fix their nervous system. They're like, whoa, dude, I got to come in and see you, right? And so that clarity of messaging is so important today. Now you actually have the ability to like turn on social media and have thousands of people seeing you every single day. And I think that's the power of it. But I still think people need to, they got to learn how to communicate, right?
Yeah, I went, and I think the docs that I'm seeing, they're in my opinion, winning at the highest level, are doing all of those things.
Yeah.
Getting out in the public. I went door to door before I opened my office back in '98, like literally in the neighborhood, knock, knock. Hey, I'm Dr. Paul. I'm doing a health survey. Can I chiropractor opening out here? Anyhow, so it was.
Dude, all that training, I think, is what makes us successful, right? Because I was like, I had to go do that I hired these kids. I remember we had like a $15 membership thing that we had a contest for, and whoever got the most got like a $3,000 bonus. So I printed off all these flyers and I went and hired these like 3 high school kids that I trained. And I said, dude, anybody who comes in, I'm going to give you guys like $15, because I was like, I want the 3,000. I didn't care about the $15 enrollment. So I hired them, and I ended up signing up like 93 people in like one day. And I made $3,000 the bonus, but people were all upset at me because they're like, dude, you went and hired people, of course. And I was like, well, they never said the rules. They just said you have to sign up as many people as possible. But it's like the more outreach you have, the more people are going to see you. And here's the thing is, social media today, people aren't looking at your TV screens in your office. They're not looking at your signs. They're looking at social media when they're in your clinic. So if you're not on there, they're not going to know what you have to offer and how you can help them. And, bringing up, other services that you may offer, I think a big reason why people aren't successful with those is because their clients don't even know that they have to offer them. So it's like, hey, you can go buy a $100,000 SoftWave machine, but if it just sits in an office and you put a sign up in your office, don't expect it to be successful, right? And so I think social media is a way that we can kind of bridge the gap between, being able to be in front of a client all the time when they turn on their social media, and they're more likely to follow through with, whatever we're asking them on the other side.
I 1,000% agree. No matter what it is, the adjustment to SoftWave, to nutrition, whatever it is, like it's 1,000% agree. Yeah.
So
and
yeah,
that's
man.
where
What's that?
That's where technology is benefiting.
Yeah. And, I even see AI. To me, AI is like, take something that you constantly have a conversation with your clients about, plug it into AI, and now start creating, PDFs, handouts, curriculum around that, because it's your own experience and your own conversations you're having with clients, and start learning how to monetize that for your people to be more successful. And that's where I see like AI really helping people, is that, hey, are you taking the conversations you're having with people and creating resources or curriculum for them where they can be even more successful with what you're doing?
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah.
Good stuff, man. Love it.
Yeah, man. Well, talk to me. I got like a couple questions. So one is, obviously, you've sold your businesses, you've done those things, but like, what are things that you invested in that you felt like paid off the most, when you had your clinics?
One, coaching is getting a mentor. One that, again, we've paid the dummy tax. We can get you there in a short amount of time. And then two, reinvesting in the business, I think I think docs get short-sighted and they start investing, just spending more at home instead of reinvesting in the business and creating that, maximizing your opportunity to create a great patient experience, because that's going to pay dividend over and over and over again. And so I think, I see too many times docs get short-sighted, short-minded, lack-minded, whatever you want it is, and not reinvesting in their business to really create that wow experience. I remodeled like every 2 to 3 years. I did something. Like if you look at the trends, like look at, we'll just say Starbucks, love them or hate them, like they're constantly updating their stuff to create a great customer experience. And so I think, first and foremost, you have to reinvest in your business, and then, reinvesting in yourself as well. So
yeah, what is my guy that does life insurance talks about, you are your number one asset and your business is your number one investment.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's
True.
a huge thing, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And people, I think the other thing too is a lot of times we want to outsource investing, right? So it's like if I invested $100,000 into my business, I would get probably a higher rate of return than anywhere else. If I invest $100,000 in the stock market, I'm letting someone else ultimately control that outcome, right? And I think that's what's cool about being a business owner is like you can invest in yourself and you can invest in your business, and like that's your highest rate of return.
Yeah. Yeah, back to not selling, right? Like because now I completely had to shift where those were invested in something else. Whereas if I had 5, who knows? I'd have 8 now, 9. Who knows where I'd be? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I sold my gyms, and I think I just was kind of like grew out of
that
different
season.
That model of business, and I think sometimes it's easy to be like, well, if I still had it, I'd be taking over the world. So. But yeah, I mean, I think it's cool, man. And I think, for you, like knowing your story and knowing your history is like, I think, maybe God's got something bigger for you that is like, you needed to go back to and get some other training to be able to kind of like take, whatever you're going to do next to kind of like that next level.
Yeah, I agree. Still digging in and trying to be obedient.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's tough. Like maybe our last thing is like, what was the hardest part of you selling? Like, because everybody talks about selling. You're like, dude, I got all this money, but nobody ever talks about what happens to your identity after you sell and that transition.
Yeah, so couple-fold, right? Like it's easy to get complacent, right? Like it's like and so that's first and foremost thing. But then for me, it was the hardest part was seeing my baby essentially not running and performing to the way that I left it, which was tough. Again, we're in the relationship business. So I had, at the time, 24, 25 years of relationships that I had built with practice members that, knew me personally, we become, essentially friends and
right.
seeing them outside and then like, yo, da, 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 I'm like, sorry, so that was probably, partly the hardest part, but to your point, like identity too, right? Like I had it was gone. Yeah. So is the,
right.
So it's
I
tough.
think the hardest part, I think the two hardest things were like, hey, if I'm not a trainer, then like, who am I?
Yeah.
Right. Because I'd been a trainer for like 20 years. And then I'm like, all of a sudden now you're not. That was like, I didn't think that was going to be a big deal. And then I was like, dude, I got to like redefine who I am.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was like people always telling you how great you were. All of a sudden, like that just like was gone. Right. And, it was like, where did I get all my fulfillment from? And so it was kind of crazy to go through that whole process, but that was, that could probably be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, right. So. Yeah, exactly.
Well, hey, man.
I mean, you're in the same journey, right? Back to like, you feel like God's got something bigger for you. And I do too. And some of that even got spoken over me at my last event. So but I'm still trying to, still being obedient and marching forward, like, all right, waiting for that door to open up where it blossoms. So yeah.
Yeah, man. I really think just from the conversation, I think there's something big for you coming that you've been prepping for, the last like 3 to 5 years. And like, I see you kind of stepping into that, whatever that is. Right.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
But hey, man, it's so good to catch up with you, and I really appreciate you being on today. If somebody wants to know about Unstoppable Cairo, how do they get in contact with you?
Oh man, social's easiest at Dr. Paul Reid official, Insta, Paul Reid on Facebook, drpaulreid.co is the site. But yeah.
Cool. Okay. And guys, if you're listening to this, go into the show notes. There'll be a direct link to Paul's website or Instagram. So go check it out. If you guys are looking to connect with a group of like-minded health professionals, go ahead and go into the show notes, our Habit-Based Lifestyle Secrets group, where we talk about ways you can grow on, Facebook, everything to do with your business and habits. Hope you guys have a great week, and I look forward to talking soon.
You've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewell.